Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life when you feel like the walls are closing in and the light at the end of the tunnel feels like a distant illusion. But what if I told you that even within that darkness, there lies a spark waiting to become a flame? What if I told you that success isn't a distant shore only the lucky reach, but rather a destination carved by the footsteps of daily choices, unwavering habits, and a heart full of purpose? Success doesn't favor the privileged, it favors the consistent. It doesn't knock on every door, it responds to those who refuse to stop knocking on its own. Today, I want to share with you the 5 winning habits that not only attract success, but anchor you into a life of meaning, resilience, and deep fulfillment. These are not just habits. They are whispers from the soul, echoing what we are truly capable of becoming. Choose purpose over pain. Sometimes life shakes you not to destroy you, but to awaken the part of you that was sleeping beneath the surface of survival. Pain often enters like an uninvited guest, yet it brings a message written in the ink of transformation. You are not what broke you. You are what you build from those broken pieces. When you choose purpose over pain, you no longer ask the world to define your worth. You begin to define it for yourself. Purpose doesn't need perfection. It only needs your willingness to keep going when everything around you says to stop. The truth is, most people carry pain like a wound. Very few turn it into a weapon of light. But you can. You must. Because when you begin to ask yourself not, why me? But what now? You take the first breath of your becoming. There is a silent nobility in those who continue despite the chaos. That nobility doesn't roar. It whispers. And in the quiet echo of purpose, you begin to find yourself again. The self that was never defined by trauma, only refined by it. The self that doesn't just survive, but writes poetry in the language of perseverance. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to make space for something bigger than your pain. Purpose is not a map you follow. It is a light you ignite every time you choose. Healing over hate, growth over grief, and meaning over misery. You don't wait for purpose to arrive. You rise and create it, brick by brick, breath by breath. Let your scars speak not of suffering, but of stories that mattered. Let your brokenness become the most beautiful part of your truth. Because people don't connect to perfection, they connect to your resilience. And there is nothing more magnetic, more powerful, more human than someone who turns agony into advocacy. You are allowed to cry, to fall, to break, but don't stay there. Find something, anything that gives your pain a name that doesn't end in shame. Maybe it's helping someone else heal. Maybe it's writing. Maybe it's simply waking up one more day when you didn't think you could. That too is purpose. When life hands you a void, don't fill it with resentment. Fill it with intention. Because your purpose will never be louder than your excuses, but it will always be stronger. Choose to be someone whose presence reminds others that they too can rise. Not in spite of the pain, but because of it. Purpose does not ask for perfection, only your presence. And your presence, after all that you've endured, is already proof of your power. Do not let your past define you. Let it refine you. Because even the ashes of the old you can become the soil of the new you. And when you wake up every day with the question, whom can I serve today with my story? You no longer live in pain, you live in purpose. That choice changes everything. That choice makes every setback sacred. That choice whispers, you were not broken for nothing. You didn't survive just to keep surviving. You survived to lead, to light the way, to show the world that even the deepest darkness cannot extinguish the fire of someone who knows why they are here. And if you don't know, yet make your why love. Make it service. Make it hope. Purpose doesn't always roar with clarity. Sometimes it comes as a gentle pull. A nudge in your heart, a stranger you help, a tear that teaches. And every time you say yes to it, you step into your calling. Even if you're still bleeding, especially if you're still bleeding, because there is someone out there praying for a voice like yours, praying for the courage you think you don't have. You are their miracle in waiting. You are their reason to believe. Don't let the pain silence your message. Let it amplify your truth. What the world calls tragedy, your soul can turn into triumph, not by erasing it, but by embracing it. holding it with dignity, standing tall in the storm and saying, "This too I will use." That is what it means to choose purpose. That is what it means to rewrite pain. And no matter how heavy the past has been, purpose gives your pain wings. It doesn't erase what happened. It simply ensures it wasn't in vain. You may not have chosen the wound, but you get to choose the way it heals. That is your power. That is your purpose. Speak to yourself with grace. There is no voice in this world that shapes your destiny more than the one you hear in your own mind. And yet, how often is that voice soaked in criticism instead of compassion? How often do you speak to yourself in ways you would never speak to a friend? It's time to change that. It's time to choose grace. Every morning before the world judges you, you have already judged yourself. Too slow, too loud, too emotional, too messy. And slowly, silently, you build a prison of your own expectations. But what if, instead of condemning yourself, you chose to comfort yourself? What if your inner dialogue became your inner ally? The truth is, grace is not about letting yourself off the hook. It's about holding space for your humanness, for your softness, for your stumbling. Because growth was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be raw, real, and relentless. Grace allows that. There is a little child inside of you still waiting to hear, "You're doing your best." That voice of grace is the balm to every wound the world never saw. And when you choose to speak gently, you begin to rewire your story from punishment to progress, from shame to self-belief. You are not lazy. You are tired from carrying burdens no one else can see. You are not weak. You are wounded, healing, and still trying. That's not failure. That's bravery. Speak to yourself like someone who is learning to love the very thing they used to run from, their reflection. Grace is a habit, not a moment. It's built in the way you speak to yourself after a mistake, in the way you respond to your tears, in the way you forgive yourself not once, but daily. Because you will fall again. But every fall becomes softer when you learn how to catch yourself. Even the strongest trees bend. So why expect yourself to always stand tall? Let grace be your grounding. Your softness is not your weakness, it is your secret strength. It is what allows you to heal without hardening. The journey to self-belief starts with silence. When you quiet the noise of judgment, you can hear the whisper of grace. That whisper says, "You are not behind. You are exactly where you are supposed to be." And when you begin to believe that, you stop racing and start rising. There will always be parts of you still learning, still unlearning, still becoming. Don't shame those parts. Cherish them, because they are the evidence that you are alive, awake, and moving forward. Grace doesn't erase flaws, it embraces them, and through that embrace, transforms them. Speak softly to yourself in the moments that feel the hardest. When the world feels too loud, let your inner voice be a sanctuary. Be the kindness you crave. Be the acceptance you never received. It starts within, and from there, it radiates. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be seen, heard, and honored by you first. That is where grace begins. Not in grand affirmations, but in quiet kindness, in breathing deeply and saying, "Even this version of me is worthy." Let your inner voice become your compass, not one of fear, but of faith. Faith in your ability to grow, to change, to try again. Speak words that water your spirit, that nourish your resilience, that honor your effort. You've spent too long being your own enemy. Now, become your own home. A place where you are safe to fall, safe to rise, safe to simply be. When your inner dialogue shifts, everything shifts. You begin to attract the love, peace, and success that mirrors your own energy. Because grace is not just how you treat others, it is how you treat yourself when no one is watching. And when you master that, you become unstoppable. Not because you never fail, but because you never stop forgiving. And as you walk this journey, may your words be a salve, not a sword. May you look in the mirror, not to criticize, but to connect. May you choose again and again to speak to yourself with the kind of grace that changes everything. Embrace stillness before every storm. There is a strange kind of power that is born in the quiet. A power that doesn't scream for attention but waits patiently in the shadows of stillness. In a world that celebrates hustle, noise, and urgency, the habit of stillness becomes an act of rebellion. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that listens. Stillness is not the absence of movement in it, is the presence of peace. It is the choice to sit with yourself long enough to hear what your soul has been trying to say. Because truth doesn't chase us in the chaos. It waits in the silence. And when we finally stop running, it begins to rise. We are taught to act quickly, to respond fast, to stay ahead. But the most powerful decisions are rarely made in panic. They are born from reflection, from pausing before reacting, from breathing before breaking. And this stillness, when practiced daily, becomes your strength when the storm arrives. There's something sacred about creating space within yourself. The world outside can be chaotic, but inside you build a sanctuary, a place untouched by the opinions, expectations, or demands of others. That is where clarity is born. That is where courage begins. Stillness doesn't demand answers. It invites awareness. It tells you it's okay not to know. It's okay to wait. It's okay to just be. And in that permission, you begin to peel off the layers of pressure that were never yours to carry. When you practice stillness, you realize how much of your anxiety was borrowed, how much of your urgency was inherited. And in that awareness, you begin to return home to yourself, to the rhythm of your own breath, to the voice that was silenced beneath the rush. The world will push you to speak, to act, to prove. But stillness teaches you that not every battle deserves a reaction. Not every comment deserves your energy. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is no move at all, just presence. This habit of stillness prepares you for the inevitable storms. Because when chaos knocks, you don't crumble, you return to the place within you that cannot be shaken. That still place, quiet yet unbreakable, becomes your foundation. It's in the silence that ideas are born, that creativity is nurtured, that wounds begin to whisper their need to heal. In stillness, you realize that you don't need to chase anything. The right things find you when your energy becomes aligned with your peace. Stillness is not laziness. It is wisdom. It is the space between stimulus and response where power resides, where intention lives, and where the best version of you begins to emerge unrushed, unshaken, undeniable. You start to walk slower, but with more certainty. You speak less, but with more impact. You stop explaining yourself to the world and start listening to yourself instead. That is the power stillness gives you. It quiets the outside so you can finally hear the inside. It takes courage to slow down. It takes discipline to pause in a culture that tells you to constantly move. But your soul doesn't grow in chaos, it grows in calm. And when you choose stillness daily, you begin to grow in directions you never imagined. Let the world be fast. You be intentional. Let the world shout. You listen. Let the world perform. You pause. Because in stillness, you don't just survive, you expand. Not outward, but inward. And that inward expansion is the birthplace of your deepest success. The storms will come, but they won't shake you when you are rooted in stillness. This is your grounding. This is your practice. This is your power. And once you know the sanctuary inside you, you'll never again look for peace outside you. In stillness, you become your own anchor. And even if the winds howl and the sky darkens, you remain steady, soft, unshaken, because you've made it a habit not just to endure the storm, but to find yourself within it. Turn comparison into compassion. Comparison is the thief that sneaks into your heart and steals your joy before you even know it's gone. It is subtle, it is silent, and it is everywhere. But what if, instead of seeing others as a reflection of what you lack, you began to see them as a reflection of what's possible? We compare because we forget our worth. We forget that someone else's brilliance doesn't dull our own, that someone else's timing doesn't delay our journey, and that their success does not imply our failure. What we admire in others can become our mirror if we choose compassion over competition. It takes strength to see someone shine and still believe in your own light. But that strength grows every time you replace envy with empathy. Every time you choose to see someone else's story, not as a threat, but as a testimony. Comparison keeps us small. It turns dreams into doubts and victories into voids. But compassion expands us. It allows us to celebrate others while still holding space for our own becoming. Because love multiplies, it never subtracts. There is a story behind every smile, a battle behind every success. When you look beyond the highlight reel, you realize that everyone is walking their own path, carrying their own pain, hiding their own hope. Compassion lets you see that. Comparison never will. When you turn comparison into compassion, you begin to understand that life is not a race, it's a rhythm. And your rhythm doesn't have to match anyone else's rhythm. Your beat, your pace, your journey, they are yours for a reason. Make it a habit to bless what you see, even if you don't have it yet. Celebrate what you admire, even if it hasn't shown up for you. That energy, that grace returns to you in ways you can't imagine. What you bless, blesses you. Your time will come. Your light will rise. But in the waiting, let others' victories be a source of inspiration, not insecurity. Let them remind you that it's possible, that it's real, that it's on the way. You don't have to be them to be enough. You don't have to dim them to shine. Compassion says there's room for both. Comparison says there's only room for one. You choose what you want to believe. And that belief shapes your destiny. Every time you compare, pause, breathe, remind yourself, their success is not my failure. Their journey is not my blueprint. Their timing is not my clock. And in that pause, let compassion speak. Build a habit of praising others with an open heart. Make your energy a place where others feel seen, not sized up. Because when your joy is shared, not measured, it grows. And what grows with love stays. This shift isn't always easy, but it is always worth it. Because the more you practice compassion, the less room there is for resentment, the less space there is for scarcity. The more you attract people, purpose, and peace that match your energy. Jealousy shrinks your soul. Compassion stretches it. And when you live with a stretched, open, expansive heart, success becomes inevitable. Because now, it's not about proving, it's about becoming. Choose to see others not as competitors, but as companions on this complex, beautiful, ever-evolving human journey. That one habit alone can redefine your success and your spirit. Commit to growth, not perfection. Perfection is seductive, but it's also suffocating. It whispers that you must always be more, better, faster, flawless. But growth whispers something entirely different. It says, you are enough to begin. And that beginning is where everything changes. When you chase perfection, you live in fear. Fear of failing, of falling short, of being seen in your rawest, realest form. But when you commit to growth, fear becomes fuel. Mistakes become lessons. The process becomes the purpose. Growth gives you permission to breathe, to try, to experiment, to fail forward. Perfection demands performance. Growth allows progress. And in that shift, your entire life begins to unfold in its most authentic form. You are not meant to be perfect. You are meant to evolve. To wake up every day and say, how can I become more of who I truly am? That question is more powerful than any external measurement of success. Perfection is rigid. Growth is fluid. Perfection says, I must be right. Growth says, I must be real. And the real you, the evolving, healing, learning you, is far more impactful than any polished version the world might prefer. Make it a habit to celebrate effort, not just outcomes. To find pride in persistence, not just praise. That daily commitment to growth becomes your fuel, your fire, your foundation. When you release perfection, you stop fearing failure. Because now, failure isn't final, it's formative. It shapes you, not shames you. It builds you, not breaks you. It gives you wisdom, not wounds. The people who create real impact are not flawless. They are simply brave. Brave enough to start before they're ready. Brave enough to show up while still uncertain. Brave enough to rise even after the fall. Growth asks for your honesty, not your excellence. It wants your truth, not your title. And when you give it that, when you commit to becoming instead of arriving, success becomes a byproduct, not a destination. This is your journey, not toward perfection, but toward presence, toward alignment, toward becoming the person your younger self would be proud of and your future self will thank you for. Give yourself room to grow, to unlearn what no longer serves you, to relearn what lights you up, to build a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. Every step you take in the direction of growth, no matter how small, is sacred. It is progress. It is success. It is enough. You are enough. Make it your habit to embrace the becoming, to honor the unfolding, because the person you are becoming through this process is stronger, wiser, and more powerful than any illusion of perfection could ever be. And when you live from that place not to impress, but to impact, you don't just attract success, you attract purpose, and that is the most beautiful kind of success there is. In the end, in a world obsessed with outcomes, titles, and appearances, the quiet power of habits often goes unnoticed. Yet it is these subtle, unseen rhythms that shape the lives of those who rise from the ashes and touch the stars. The ones who do not just survive but lead. The ones who do not just win but heal. The ones who do not just chase success but attract it through who they are becoming every single day. The winning habits that truly magnetize success are not found in grand gestures or viral moments. They live in the way you wake up and choose purpose, even when your heart is heavy. They echo in the way you speak to yourself when no one else is around to applaud you. They breathe in the stillness you carve before the world demands your reaction. They shine in the way you choose compassion over comparison again and again. And they root themselves deep in your commitment to grow, not to impress, not to perfect, but to become. These habits are quiet revolutions. They don't shout, they don't rush, they don't beg for validation, but they transform you from the inside out. And as you change, so does everything around you. Because when your spirit begins to rise in truth, the world has no choice but to rise to meet it. Success is not something you chase, it is something you become. And who you become is crafted not in the spotlight, but in the silence. Not in applause, but in alignment. Not in perfection, but in presence. That's where your power lives. That's where real success begins to bloom. If your life has been cracked open, if your story has been messy, if your journey has been anything but easy, take heart. Because those are the souls the world remembers. Not for how flawless they were, but for how fiercely they kept showing up. With love, with light, with truth, with habits that heal them from within. You don't need more luck. You don't need more followers. You don't need anyone to crown you worthy. You only need the courage to show up with these habits every single day, even when no one sees you. Especially then, because that's when character is built. That's when strength is forged. That's when destiny shifts. Make it your mission not to impress the world, but to impact it. Not by shouting louder, but by standing firmer. Not by pretending, but by becoming. Let your habits speak when your voice trembles. Let your growth speak when the world doubts. Let your stillness, your grace, your purpose carry you through every storm. And when you look back on this journey, this long, winding, unpredictable journey, you will not remember the applause. You will remember the mornings you rose with trembling hands and an unshakable will. You will remember the days you chose kindness over criticism, softness over shame, silence over noise. You will remember the nights you almost gave up but didn't. And that is success. Because true success is not in what you have. It's in what you hold on to when everything else falls away. It's in who you become when no one is clapping. It's in the habits you practice when the world isn't watching. Those are the habits that last. Those are the habits that lift you. Those are the habits that win. So let this be your reminder. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming. And if you make these winning habits your compass, not only will you attract success, you will redefine it. Let your life be the message. Let your habits be the voice. And let your journey be the proof that success is not found on the outside, but grown, nurtured, and bloomed within.